The Crusader album was done the year following. Big Things being released. Big Things was actually recorded mostly in 2001, and then mastered and released in February. So then that year, I spent most of my time touring, and then in Christmas time, I went to New York. I spent 3 months in New York, and long story, but I managed to meet with some other producers who were really experienced, and I spent 3 months in a studio with these guys, making beats and contributing to their production company and watching how they made songs, and learning a lot. And so I came home and I felt like I was super skilled. Like, I was way more sure of what I was doing. The main lesson I learned was that, they use the same tools that we use back home. There's no mystery anymore. The curtain had been pulled aside and I got to see exactly what they were doing. So that gave me more confidence to come back home, and there was no reason why we couldn't make music as good as what they were doing in the States.
Who were they?
The production company is called Grind Music, and it's two guys, Sean C and LV. And their track list, the production credits nowadays lists a lot of people that Jay-Z, Busta Rhymes, and Fat Joe, Big Pun. It just goes on and on. But great music, they make great stuff.
And they were doing it on Logic rather than...
No, they were using MPC and Pro Tools, and then not long after I left, they moved to the MPC 4000. But it was all MPC-based stuff. So that was it. Like walking into a room, much smaller than this, maybe a quarter of this size, with all this gear just rammed in there, a Triton keyboard, MPC 2000, Mackie desk, and Pro Tools running on like a G4, and I can't remember what mic they had. What is it called? The MP? Oh no, Ampix. Ampix preamp. Is that right? No.
MP.
Is that something? Anyway, one of those.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the preamp, but I thought the gear generally was pretty basic.
Yeah.
But this is the stuff they were making to get records to all manner of people, and I was like, whoa,
Wasn't
Ghostface and LL Cool J and
SSL console, dude.
no, not the guts of it.
Yeah.
They'd make it, track it, and then next minute, a year later, they've signed the production company to Bad Boy and they're doing stuff with Puff Daddy.
Yeah.
No joke. That's what they went and did. The next year, I produced Crusader with Scribe, so we both did all right things.
So the track which you eventually hear though will have been played out again from the MPC into an SSL desk or something though.
Quite possibly, depending on the budget of the artist who's picked that piece of music. Then it goes. You send the session, so those Pro Tools stems. You send it to them and their engineer, and 9 times out of 10, you have nothing left to do with the song, unless you are a producer with a name, and then you'll be able to call them and you'll both book a studio and they'll come to work with you. But if you're depends on, it's all totem pole shit. Yeah. If you're the big guy, boom, they come to you, and then then it might be mixed. It might be mixed nowadays though. It'll probably be mixed all inside Pro Tools. That's more likely the case. But back then, 2003, there were still big rooms with big SSLs, and they were getting work through there all the time. And an engineer would mix all that stuff, and that's how they do it. But I didn't finish answering your question, did I? I go on tangents.
That's the point of it.
Yeah, the Scribe record, the Crusader album was basically a case of I'd given him a bunch of beats through 2002 before I went away, and then I came back with a few more, and then we kind of got together in about March, April, and I was like, what have you got? And he's like, yeah, I've got these songs, and he kind of only had about 7 or 8 songs at that point, but they were all winners. I was like, cool, well, let's just get in and track all of these and see what we can do. And so we just spent maybe 5 days and recorded all the raps that he had over all those beats. And then Scribe went back to Christchurch, kind of disappeared off the planet as he does sometimes, and left me to it, which was totally fine by me. It was just me and Chris working these songs.
So you were still driving the development of those songs in a way?
Yeah. Chris Shetland was engineering. He was using Logic. I was sitting right next to him at the desk, and just basically back and forth telling him what I needed to do. And it was kind of like he was my hands. By that point, I could picture what the song was going to be, and I already knew enough about what he was doing that I could kind of tell him, do that one, that one, that one. And then I'd learned basic audio editing, so then sometimes I get frustrated and be like, all right, now I've got to edit this. And that's when I started to get more hands-on with the software. So through that process of that album, and eventually, we eventually fleshed some things out Not Many was gonna be just the intro to the album, the song Not Many, which became a huge hit. Scribe was like, yeah, it's just the intro, and I was like, well, might have something to it, man. It might be a little
The
bit.
intro to the actual video, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The first video.
The first video, yeah. But then we tagged it on the end as well, the hook, and then people reacted, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool. We need to do something with this song, but we'd already put the original version on the single. If anybody remembers, the stand-up single had Not Many on it, the original version. So I was like, how can we? Everyone's hyped on this song, Not Many. How can we make that really the big song? Like, you know, how can we kind of sell it again, so to speak? And then one morning I was like, remix. Called Savage and this young guy David Dallas, aka Konsai, and got them on the song. Yeah, that's another story, but yeah, got that done really quickly and put that out, and that was massive. So we had 2 remixes, or maybe we had Not Many, and then we had Not Many remix, so that made 8 songs, and then we had My Lady, and then we had the My Lady remix, so that took us to another song, and then we had some of the other guys, Ali, producer from Christchurch, he had a song called Too Late with Scribe that was used on another record. So I was like, hey Scribe, can we use that song? He's like, yeah. So we put that on. So we started to flesh out the album. And because people always hit me up like, man, it's a really short album. I was like, well, this is how many songs he had. But you know,
So
we
the
pushed to
idea
complete
didn't
it.
actually start, right, we're making an album for Scribe. It was more like, let's get some rhymes down for you.
Kind of. Yeah, I mean, in Scribe's head, he was like, I'm doing my album next. And I was like, awesome, let's do your album next.
Yeah.
Came home, and then the material that we had to work with respect to him, didn't quite add up to what I imagined being the full album. But through the process of a few months, we managed to make it into a record. And fortunately, the 2 singles that we recorded first, with Stand Up and Not Many, took off so fast, it almost didn't matter. We could have put any fucking shit on the album because it was just going to sell. It was that time in music and that time in New Zealand hip-hop that we were on that crest of that wave. So we scraped by on the skin of our teeth, and it was a huge success for everybody.
So Scribe was in Christchurch, and obviously internet wasn't what it is today. How was the sort of process of sounding stuff off with him? How often did he come back up to sort of see how things were going?
He recorded, by best of my memory, he recorded the raps, and then maybe 3 months later he came up and heard the album. Yeah, pretty sure that's how it went. I may have seen him some rough versions at one point, but I think he didn't hear the whole thing until we were mastering. Which I don't know if that's just kind of how it went. Like, in retrospect, I was a bit of a dick. Like, I probably should have found a way to get him to Auckland. But you've got to think, none of us had any money. Like, we couldn't afford to fly back and forth. Nowadays, I'll go see him today, you know? Like, we could do it. You know, we have businesses, and so we can do things. At that time, I don't think he even had a cell phone for most of that period. Yeah, we were buying each other lunch. It was kind of like that. It was a labour of love. Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet. All right, well, we might have a quick break. I can just check the tapes.
Yeah, get some
extra
water.
beers.
It'd be great.
Yep.
Awesome.
Sweet.
This is usually when people ask like a really good question, eh?
Well, everything stays.
Sweet.
I
I must have been boring, bro. We lost one, eh?
I know. Well, did he
He's
think?
like, "Oh,
Did he think it was all over?
I don't know, man. I think he's had enough.
Probably thought you were a hard dance producer. Or
Yeah, he's
something.
like, I thought we were going to be talking about glow sticks, man. You know what's going on?
BPM is half what it should be, really.
Sweet.
So I guess the second half. I mean, one thing that's obviously been quite prevalent in the last couple of years is that your sound has taken a little bit of a shift.
Yes.
What brought that about? Was it something? Was it a conscious point? You got to a point, or was it just something that you?
It's kind of as a result of I was creatively a little bit stagnant.
Yeah.
You know, kind of bored with what I was making myself.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I was making, I was like, yeah, this is good, all right, but you know, sounds like everything else I've done for the last 7 years. I actually got to that point. You know, I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And there'd also been a couple of things prior or around the same time that all kind of happened to push me in this direction. One of which being technology, DJing technology in particular with Serato Scratch Live. So going from a DJ who used to take a crate of say 80 records to a gig, then having an entire library, like thousands of songs, my entire MP3 library with me at every gig, it allowed me, if I wanted to go on a little tangent and play, 20 minutes of 80s pop songs, like
Yep.
Guilty Pleasures,
Yep.
just to be funny. And then, maybe another 20 minutes of 90s kind of Daft Punk and Armand Van Helden and dance tunes. And if an audience was into
Yeah,
it, if they were open to it and the party was working, I'd do these things. And I was like, man, I'm really enjoying playing stuff that's faster.
Ah, okay.
Because
Yeah.
most of the hip hop that I played would be either like your bounce tempo, which is like slowest thing being about a 70 BPM to around that 80 area,
Yeah.
which is like your southern stuff, or it's in the 90, like 88 to 96, maybe topping out at 103. Like the BPM range is kind of here. It's all mid tempo.
Mhm.
And some of the records I was pulling out were like 130, and they just have a whole different energy.
Yeah.
And I like that. And at the same time, also, this is the third part of it, there are DJs like A-Track and Diplo and DJ AM, rest in peace, that were doing mashup kind of things and using a lot of club beats in their stuff, but each of them having quite a hip-hop kind of underpinning to their,
Yep.
their sets and their style.
Yep.
So I could relate to it, and I dug it. I was like, this is cool. And even in the pop world, you have what Timbaland was doing, and he made a transition from R&B and hip hop to like pop dance.
Yep.
And I really dug it. I was like, this is cool. And so yeah, all of those things combined, and my own kind of boredom with what I was doing, I was like, man, how about I take the same bunch of sounds that I have on the MPC right now and just speed that up to 120. And that's pretty much exactly how I made the everything music for everything. Had the same sample already laid up, and I was trying to make it work at 90 BPM, and it was just flat and boring. I was like, this is cool, the sounds are cool, but it's not, I'm not moving, like, so I just sped it up, and I was like, actually, that's all right. And I just changed the drums a little bit.
Yeah.
Not the sounds were actually the same sounds that I was using for a hip hop beat, but faster.
Yeah.
And so I changed the programming, and that's how I kind of hit on that vibe. And I made a whole bunch of beat music at that kind of tempo, and started really getting into it. And started DJing more of those records too, and feeling more comfortable at playing that kind of music, freaking out some of the audiences. You got to be honest. Like some of them were like, "Whoa, how do we just go from Jay-Z to this?" Like I don't quite get it, but I seem to be right on time, man. Because this is like 2008, and dropped the Everything single. And then immediately after, you've got things like Dizzy Rascal Bonkers, and you've got the Duck Sauce thing with Armand Van Helden coming back and doing A-Track, working with A-Track, and then things like that. So I was like, well, actually, now it kind of plugs in.
So, the sound is kind of fits in there.
And I think the first thing that kind of pop-wise was going that way was like American Boy with Estelle and Kanye West. And people were like, whoa, this is hip-hop and R&B, but at 118.
Yeah.
It's bordering on, we're getting to that house area. And we're right on time, really. It all made sense.
As you, they are slightly different styles of music. Has the way you do the production changed at all? Or are you pretty much applying what you've always been doing for hip hop now to your house and your...
The more that I do, the more it starts to change.
Okay.
Because at first, I was actually consciously like, I'm not going to make house records.
Yeah.
I'm going to make hip hop that's fast.
That's fast. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, that's going to be my little point of difference.
Yeah.
And as I experiment more and do more, I'm like, actually, I just made a straight up house record.
Yeah.
Like track 3 on my new album is called The Soul. It's just instrumental, and it's just house. Like, the first 32, 64 bars are just the 4/4 kick drum, just doof, 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 in the filter. And I was like, wow, I never thought I'd make anything like that, but I'm enjoying it,
Yeah.
And I've got to follow my own creative muse, so to speak. I do have to do that to keep myself inspired and excited to make music. And